Welcome to Adult Siblings Versus, a podcast where a grown-ass brother and sister put aside their childhood rivalry in order to review nostalgic pieces of pop culture. I'm your co-host, Jason S. Leverett.
And I'm your other co-host, Ariel Leverett.
Do you hear that, Ariel? Do you hear the drums?
Oh, God. The distant sound of drumming.
That was a trap. There are no drums.
No.
You're crazy, girl.
Ah, shit. It's like, is this Jumanji or Doctor Who, am I right?
Oh, no. Are you a kid about to play a board game, or are you the master? So this week we are looking at Jumanji. Now, I hate that I have to specify this, but we are specifically talking about the original Jumanji film, not the two. I mean, I guess they're sequels. Apparently, they take place in the same universe.
Oh, they're not. Yeah, I suppose.
I have not seen the second one. The first one, I don't think connects at all. But the second one apparently has a cameo from the actress who plays the aunt in this movie, reprising her role. But
Baby Newirth?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know what that entailed. It didn't seem. I looked at the Wikipedia plot description, and I don't think it mentions her. So I don't know if it's just like a kind of a come in and she's like, "Oh wow, this again," which would be very weird because she should have no knowledge. She's like one of the characters who would have no knowledge of what happens in this movie.
Yeah, literally only two characters do.
Yeah. So and neither of them. Well, one died, but neither of them appear in this film. So I don't know. But we're not watching those movies. But although I will talk about them briefly.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
I don't love Jumanji, that new Jumanji movie, but there's aspects of it that I do like, and I do like Dwayne Johnson's performance as like a 15-year-old trapped in the Rock's body.
But that's not what we're talking about. Oh, gosh. Oh, no.
No, talking about the original, as I said. So we're going to talk about that film. We're going to talk about some of the connected media, because there is a Jumanji media that I think we spent a lot of time watching outside of this movie. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But get some housekeeping out the way first. If you would like to reach out to us and tell us how much you loved the two new Jumanji movies and how we're infidels for not being on the Kevin Hart train. You email us at adultsiblingsversus@gmail.com. We are on Twitter at adultversus. We are on Instagram at adultsiblingsversus. And we have a Facebook page that you can check out as well. And just kind of a reminder to everybody, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you are leaving high review marks on your podcaster of choice. So for example, Apple Podcasts should have a place where you can give us a 5-star rating and you can give us a review. That helps the algorithm and all that good stuff. Now, Jumanji. So Ariel, I was actually thinking about this myself, and I actually have a little hard time pinpointing it for me. But what is your nostalgia for this film?
I feel like my main nostalgia for this film is the game itself, like the board game itself.
We had that, didn't we?
We did have a version of it, but it's what I really wanted was like that beautiful wooden game. Well, which was not available at Toys R Us. It was just a normal kind of cardboard box, board game. But like the game and the cartoon. And I have a very vivid memory of being chased by a dream being chased by the vines, and one of those deals where you're running in slow motion, you can't get away from a thing, and yeah.
I feel like that's how I am in real life when I'm running. I always feel like I'm running in slow motion whenever I go running.
Well, the whole when you're in a dream and your adrenaline does not kick in as you're trying to escape a thing.
Oh man, do you think my adrenaline doesn't kick in real life either?
Well, you're not being chased by a thing. I think
I'm constantly being chased by the pressures of the white man. This would not have been something easily available in 1995, but I bet you could probably find a replica of the Jumanji game now. Maybe
I
even a fully functional one.
I
Well,
do.
not fully functional one. It's not going to be magic. It's not going to give ghost riddles.
I mean, it's true. I do not want that. Yeah, trust me. I have thought about it. Because it's like I do think I probably can find a replica of the Jumanji game somewhere online, and I do think about it.
So for me, I like I said, I think I have more nostalgia for the cartoon than the movie. As far as the movie goes, I don't even remember if I saw it in theaters. I guess I must have. I remember that Jumanji was one of many special effects heavy movies that our dad was super jazzed about watching the making of. Like that would they used, because I don't know if they do this anymore, but back in the day they used to have these specials for big movies where they would like go behind the scenes and see how all the effects work. It's like, I think Roger Rabbit was an example of something like that. But I remember that like a huge deal was made about the special effects in this movie and like how it was cutting edge and amazing they were looking. Not to put the cart before the horse, but it looks real bad. I have theories why we might get into it, but fuck, monkeys are not supposed to look like that. It's not.
Yeah. Holy shit, those monkeys.
But I don't even know if we owned this movie. I guess we might have, but like this was not a movie that was on my list of ones that I like to watch repeatedly.
I think we did own it. I don't think we watched it a whole lot.
Yeah, I feel like there were other Robin Williams movies that we were quicker to watch than Jumanji.
Agreed. It's like, why watch Jumanji when you got Hook and Mrs. Doubtfire?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about this movie, because this is like one of those movies that I had forgotten an important aspect of. But Jumanji is a 1995 film adaptation of the 1981 picture book that was written by Chris Van Allsburg. It was directed by Joe Johnston, who we would know best. Is that like the best way to put it? He's directed a lot of movies, some of which are ones that we have big attachments to from our childhood. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh, I could kind of feel that energy here.
Yeah. Now this was not a movie that we watched a ton, but The Rocketeer, which was something that came up a bit when we were kids, but not a ton.
It's not here nor there, but I've like rewatched that movie within the last year. Yeah, that's actually pretty fun. Anyway.
He also directed Captain America: The First Avenger.
Oh, I very much enjoy the first Captain America movie. I know people kind of go back and forth on it, but I enjoy it.
He also directed Jurassic Park 3, so it's not all good news. Now, it was the screenplay was done by Jonathan Hensley, Greg Taylor, and Jim Strain, although Van Allsburg, as I'll get to in a moment, did have a lot to do with the screenplay as well, which is kind of different. You don't usually have the original writer heavily involved in the writing of a film, but as we'll see, that's actually a little debatable. Anyway, all right, so this movie had a budget of $65 million years ago. $65 million is what I meant to say. It did a gross of $262.8 million. So that's a pretty big hit. $65 million isn't anything to sneeze at, though. That's a pretty hefty budget for the time. But this is also a very special effects heavy movie, so we're obviously seeing where the money's going. It's actually kind of funny. This movie came out the same year as Toy Story. They actually came out very close within each other. This is the movie that knocked Toy Story out of number one, in fact. Oh. And we watched Toy Story, and it has not aged great, like as far as the CG goes. But you can really kind of see the difference between a movie that's a designated CG animated film and a movie that has a lot of CG effects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like you can still appreciate Toy Story. The effects of it makes it kind of feel more like someone's school project now.
Yeah.
But it's still still fun to watch. This is just it's just looks so bad, and like having this CGI stuff in the real world, and it ain't good to look at.
So the story of this movie begins with producer Peter Guber, who convinced Chris Van Allsburg to option the book Jumanji. Van Allsburg agreed to do so, but he ended up writing one of the treatments for the film, which got picked up by TriStar Pictures. But TriStar would only do it under the condition that Robin Williams would play the lead. Now, this is where things get a little weird, and I'm not sure exactly what the deal is, because I feel like I'm seeing two different stories in one article. So here's what I understand: Robin Williams saw the script, presumably by Van Allsburg, and noped that shit. He was just like, no, thank you. Then, so we got like two alternate things said here. Like, on the one hand, what happened was that Johnston and his writing team just kept working on the script until Williams decided to accept the role. But then there's another thing I got a very large list of actors who were considered, and at least two people who turned it down, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. If Robin Williams was the first choice and they were trying to write the script to the point that he would like to actually do it, why would they need to why would they need to consider all these guys, let alone apparently reach out and offer it to some of these guys? I'm going to go through the list really fast. Might as well go do it here. So apparently, Tom Hanks, and this is in the same article, says that Tom Hanks was the first choice to play Alan.
I guess all for the best. We're gonna save this look for Castaway.
He was kind of rocking that look in Forrest Gump.
Oh, a little bit, yeah. That classic Ultra Runners look.
He turned it down to do Apollo 13. Apparently Bruce Willis was also offered it. He also turned it down. Now here's a list of folks that apparently were considered, and some of these are going to blow your mind, and at least one of them I think is a fucking lie and puts this whole thing into suspect. Dan Aykroyd, Michael Keaton, Chevy Chase. Yeah, it's not the 80s, so I'm not entirely certain why Chevy Chase was considered.
Yeah,
Sean Penn.
Okay. What are we doing?
Kevin Costner.
What?
Yeah. Richard Dreyfuss.
What's going on? This is...
Michael Douglas.
What the fuck?
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, this list does not seem real.
Bill Paxton.
Now, when they say that these people were considered, what does that mean? You thought about names?
That's a great question. Only some of them were listed as being considered. Some of them were listed as being actually turned it down. Usually considered means that they were thinking about it. Sometimes it means that someone was in talks or someone did audition, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were ever any close. Anyway, that's not the end of the list. We got to keep going. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, he'd already done Last Action Hero.
But he didn't play a man with Arrested Development from Years of Being in the Jungle. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger would have been a fucking crazy pick, because like this is like a kid from the Northeast.
Yeah,
like he pick up the Schwarzenegger accent while in the Jumanji.
Jumanji is actually a forest in Austria, so like people don't realize this.
Mom and Dad, I'm back from Jumanji. I want to get you on.
It's funny. I actually just had a beer tour this past weekend where I had Austrian guests on the tour, and we did talk a little bit about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Do they actually hate him?
No, they just don't care.
They don't make
yeah. when he's hanging out in Austria, everyone's just like, because it doesn't.
Because he's so short, no one cares about him.
Well, like Schwarzenegger doesn't matter to people like he matters to Americans.
Well, sure. I mean, like he was our greatest governor.
Yeah. So apparently, when he's about there, they're just like, all right.
Okay. Alec Baldwin was apparently considered. I might buy that one.
If only. What shenanigans.
Then Sean Connery is on this list.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. And this is the point where I was like, this can't be fucking real. But here's where I first suspect, because I took one name off to bring it up now. That's Bryan Cranston was supposedly considered. And here's what I think that's horseshit. Because we're in 1995, and Bryan Cranston is very famous for spending a huge chunk of his acting career not being famous. Like 1995, that's like probably still doing voices for Power Rangers, Bryan Cranston time period. We're a couple of years out from Malcolm in the Middle, which is where he first becomes like a bit of a household name, and we're way far away from Breaking Bad, which actually makes him an A-list star.
Yeah, I 100% cannot believe that he was considered for this pre-Malcolm in the Middle.
Certainly not in the same way that you've got fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sean Connery on the same list. I'm just like picturing like 1995, so I was like going like, who should we have for this if we can't get Robin Williams?
Is this like, did the internet make a mistake? Did they mean that they were considering him for Van Pelt?
Oh, you know what? I might have gotten that wrong. Let me just double check.
Because like if they were considering him for like the dad / Hunter, that makes more sense.
Okay, yeah. Everything written here implies this is all for the role of Alan Parrish. Now I will say that doesn't mean that this is correct. Mm-hmm. Someone could have gotten it wrong, but I just don't understand how someone is going like, oh, who could we get to play this? We need a big star to play this. We can get Harrison Ford or Schwarzenegger. I think we could even get Sean Connery to do it, maybe. Oh, how about Bryan Cranston? I heard that he just wrapped up with Power Rangers. I think he's free now. Mm-hmm. Get Saban on the phone to make sure that his contract's up. No, that just didn't fucking happen. I don't believe any of this. Okay, anyway. Regardless of how... And again, like this whole thing says that Tom Hanks was the number one choice. Like, why would Tom Hanks be the number one choice if TriStar only picked up this script with the idea that Robin Williams would have to play the role? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, like how that all works.
I feel like that's pragmatic. I feel like anytime that people are like, only this person, it's like, but like really though, I mean, the thing's got to happen.
I just don't think
you got to have other options.
But I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying that they would stick to him. I'm saying, why is Tom Hanks said to be the first choice when the obvious first choice is this other guy?
Gotcha.
It's the wording that bothers me. Anyway, the effects of this film were a combination of puppetry and animatronics that were done by Amalgamated Dynamics, and then the state-of-the-art at the time special effects that was in fact done by our friends at Industrial Light and Magic. Now we've talked about Industrial Light and Magic.
And wait, let's not forget a trip to Party City to get those spiders.
Okay, yeah, okay, sure. We've talked about Industrial Light and Magic before. They played a big role in our Star Wars conversation, specifically we talked about a good chunk in the original trilogy, and then Pixar, if I recall, was birthed at Industrial Light and Magic, so we would talk about them in our Toy Story conversations and possibly a couple other ones. This was like an in-between Jurassic Park and Phantom Menace Industrial Light and Magic, so you can kind of tell that they're using this movie to kind of experiment, like to see what can we do with making living, breathing creatures in live action. And you can actually see a little bit of the jankiness that they have here, kind of a little bit in the Phantom Menace in certain spots.
Yeah.
But I think the Phantom Menace looks better, mainly because they're not making real creatures, they're making fantasy creatures, and you can kind of make them look, if they look a little janky, look a little unreal, I mean, they're not real, they're fantasy, as opposed to making monkeys. Let me put it this way. Pixar will tell you making realistic fur is not something that's super easy to do in 1995.
They do look like monkeys that they designed based on like an old-timey picture of a monkey, where it's like, how many monkeys has that original drawer like actually come across? It's a rough road, you know.
So Jumanji was a success, but surprisingly, there wasn't like a sequel to it. Like, at least you'd think that it might have gotten a sequel, but instead, it got a spiritual sequel slash spinoff 10 years later, Zathura, A Space Adventure, which is an adaptation of the other Chris Van Allsburg book that was a kind of a spin-off slash side story to Jumanji, because Jumanji the book ends with their neighbors getting the Jumanji game and opening it up and going, hey, what's this game? It says Zathura on it.
Oh, and like as if like the game changed.
Yeah, I think they've opened it up and they found a second game inside the game. I didn't read the book, so I'm not 100% certain how that worked. But the point is that these books were, both those books were very connected in a way that the movies are not. Interestingly enough, Kirsten Dunst stars in this film. Kristen Stewart stars in Zathura, so you can better believe that I'm going to be making a lot of mistakes getting their names mixed up as we go through this episode. They did make, like I said, they made some sequels more recently that are supposedly connected. Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle and Jumanji The Next Level, where basically the game evolves itself to be a video game console because that's what the kids are into, and it wants people to play it. Although the rules of it are way different, is because it brings you to Jumanji as opposed to bringing Jumanji to you, which is what this movie is all about. Unless you're Alan.
Yeah, it definitely seems to change its tune about what it means to go into Jumanji and whether or not you are isolated.
Yeah, completely. The movies are so different. I actually wonder if the original one was its own film, and then someone the studio happened to own the IP for Jumanji said, let's put the Jumanji name on it, because they're just so different. Speaking of differences, there was an animated adaptation that we talked about. So that's 1996, the Jumanji the Animated Series. It features 3 of the 4 main characters from this one. Sarah is missing. Never shows up in this show at all. And like the later movies, it would make you wonder if maybe they were inspired by this, but like the later movies, this is also reversed. The premise is reversed. So in the TV show, how the game works is that you play it and then you get a clue, and then you're immediately transported to Jumanji and you can't leave until you solve your clue. The 2 kids, Judy and Peter, they get sent to Jumanji. Then they meet Alan, who's been stuck there for decades because he didn't see his clue before he got transported. So he has no idea what his clue is. So the premise of the show is that they solve their clue, they get to go back, but they keep going back in the hopes to help Alan find a way to get back home. And that's like the premise of the show. And unlike a lot of other TV shows of the time, it actually has an ending. Alan does eventually get home.
I remember watching that cartoon quite a bit. I mean, doing this podcast has really made me realize just how many, I guess I was really into watching the TV show spin-offs of all these things, because Lord knows I did watch a lot.
I think, part of the problem is that you have me for an older brother, because I basically watched everything. So if I'm watching everything, you're probably watching it too, either because you're like, oh, I'm just gonna watch it with my brother, or Jason won't let me change the channel.
Better this than sports.
it's either this or Hockey Town.
I mean, I swear, any time our dad was like, I'm gonna watch football, it was like, you bastard. it was so upsetting.
I have very strong memories watching this cartoon every day before school. For years. I think it was syndicated for a while, but I guess it was on UPN too. But yeah, I think I fondly remember the cartoon. It was darker than you'd think it would be. Like, sometimes characters would die. Alan's whole situation is heartbreaking. I feel like this cartoon's also kind of been forgotten about, like with the whole new wave of Jumanji fever that kind of swept the nation a couple years ago. I don't remember too many people talking about the cartoon all that much.
Yeah.
Okay, Ariel. So I was going to watch Jumanji, but unfortunately I got distracted by this board game called Jumanji. And basically what Jumanji is just me drinking hard cider and falling asleep on the couch. So, can you please explain to everyone what happens in this movie?
Sure. Maybe. May have been asleep during all of it. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. So the movie starts in 1969 in a small town in New Hampshire. It's following the character Alan Parrish. He's a preteen who's like kind of small, easy to pick on. There's a kind of a gang of guys who are messing with him, including a guy named Billy, because you know the main guy needs to be Billy, and he's gonna beat the shit out of you. Although I gotta say, hats off to the one black kid in the back of the bullying gang. It's like it's 1969, and he's managed to get on the side of people bullying other people. He gets to bully a white boy. Good for him. Any hoops.
Wouldn't fly in the South.
Yeah, it's like, dear black kid, you're lucky you're in New Hampshire. Alan is the son of this shoemaker, like a guy, like his dad is like the head of a big shoemaking company. They're kind of like the big family in the town, so much so that like a boarding school has one of the dorms like named after Alan's grandfather. It's like that big of a deal. But he keeps kind of butting heads with his dad because his dad is just kind of like old-timey masculine, whereas it's like, you need to stand up for yourself. And I also don't know how to talk about emotions, and so I will never fucking say I love you, but pat on the back sometimes, but I will argue with you if you try to talk back to me, that kind of thing. So they get into a fight, and they go off. His parents go off for some evening event, and he's come across this board game that sounds like drumming. As you see in like kind of the cold open, that some kids a while ago bury this game that is drumming. Well, this box that is drumming. You don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, like old West kids, except that it had to have been in the East.
Yeah, it's like any old timey thing is just in the West. They can't help it. It's just what happens. But Alan takes that box home, and he's about to like kind of leave, and but this girl, Sarah Whittle, who is the girlfriend, quote unquote, of Billy, the bully. She's friends with him, and she's come to check in on him because she knows he got the shit beat out of him. And
he got the beat down.
He got the beat down. They kind of decide like they're gonna play this game. No one seems to care about the fact that this game is drumming. I feel like, especially at that time in technological history, I would care more that this game is just like drumming, making drumming sounds.
If when I was 12, I'm not sure I would have.
But like, you're still, I feel like that's still in a time where you might say like, okay, it's coming from this electronic thing. I don't know if you could make that stretch in 1969, but
No,
like,
I'm trying to tell you that when I was 12, I was dumb.
So it just wouldn't have mattered.
No, I would have gotten into all sorts of magical shenanigans. You would never see my ass again. I would be trapped in Narnia or whatever.
I would have been right along with you because I am stupid, and I probably would have followed you just about anywhere. So we both would have ended up in horrible Jumanji Narnia. Anywho, so they start to play the game. But you know, once those dice drop, you're locked in, and it starts with a clue that's basically about bats. You don't see anything yet, but you can hear something a little bit. Then Alan rolls his die, and his riddle is basically you about to go into Jumanji until the other player rolls 8 or 5. I don't remember the poems.
Oh,
In Jumanji, you'll have to wait until someone else rolls 5 or 8, something like that. So he gets sucked in the game, to Sarah Whittle, that poor girl's dismay. Before she can really take in what she's seen, basically there's a barrage of bats that come in and chase her out, and so we don't know what's happened. Jump to 26 years later, there's another family moving in, the Shepherd family. Mainly the people of note are Peter and Judy Shepherd, kids who are moving into this house. They come across the game. They start to play.
Important to note that they are in mourning.
They are in mourning. Their parents have recently died, and they are living with their aunt, who apparently has used all that life insurance to buy herself a mansion.
Not what better plan, financial economic plan, than to buy a mansion in a dying town to turn into a bed and breakfast. It will attract all of the out of work folks.
Yeah, what is this? The TV show Ghost? What are we doing? Anyway, they come across the game. They start to play. All the crazy stuff starts happening again. There's a lion. There are killer mosquitoes. But Peter rolls 5 and Alan gets out. And after 26 years in Jumanji, they continue the game because they realize that all the bad stuff won't go away until you finish the game. They also have to find Sarah Whittle, the girl from before, because you have to have all the players to be able to continue the game. So shenanigans continue to happen as they go through the game and eventually get to the end. So you can say Jumanji, and then you win.
I think that the thing I liked most about this movie was when it dealt on the relationship between Alan and his father.
Yeah.
Because I actually find it pretty fascinating. It's actually kind of funny because it's like, Alan's father's demand that he go to his old school reminds me of our dad's demand that we go to Cass Tech.
Sure.
But like not obviously not to the exact same extent at all. But like it just kind of reminded me of that. But then also I was reminded that actor in this film, David Alan Grier, also went to Cass Tech. Mm-hmm. And I started getting into like a little mental loop there.
Yeah, I always get excited when I watch a thing. It's like, oh yeah, Cass Tech alum. They recently showed a group of friends the movie Harlem Nights for the first time that has Della Reese in it. And so I feel like I'm on a little bit of a Cass Tech kick right now.
Anyway, I like the scene where they're reunited at the end, and then we fast forward to quote unquote present day, and we don't see his dad again, but we hear Alan on the phone with him, and it sounds like they've maintained a very close relationship without it banging us over the head with it.
And he's alive.
Yeah, he's alive. Like, I guess he died of a broken heart like 30 years after the fact.
I guess, when you don't spend years and years grieving over the loss of your son, you feel like it's your fault. Maybe just in general, you take care of yourself better. And so you end up not dying so young.
I guess I'll talk about it here because I don't think there's actually much to most of the main character's quote-unquote character. But the other thing I really liked about this movie was actually Kirsten Dunst. I really thought Kirsten Dunst did a really good child acting performance.
I do too. It's like, yeah, that kid's got something. Can't wait to see her do more stuff.
It makes sense because I believe this is the follow-up to her performance in Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, yeah. Bubble. Yep, sure.
Where she got an incredible amount of critical acclaim, although no Academy Award nominations. I was actually a little surprised about that, to find out that she didn't get that. So Kirsten Dunst was like riding high. Like, she was like on a high trajectory. This is probably like her first big I'm starring in a film type of deal, but she ended up being like they're still a couple of years away from like Bring It On and Spider-Man.
And in between you have Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Oh, you know what? I've never seen that.
Oh, there are a lot of jokes in that movie that do not hold up. So like grain of salt with watching it. But it is a fun movie. Like I used to like it a lot more than I do now.
I don't know if Kirsten Dunst has had the best career. I feel like she keeps, considering what we say for her child actress, you would think that she would have gotten media roles as she got older. And I feel like a lot of the movies that she was in, she wasn't called to do a ton. Mm-hmm. And like the role that everyone remembers her from is as Mary Jane in Spider-Man, which that character is nothing. It's a nothing character.
Yeah, that is a bummer. I agree. I can't really think of many things I've seen her in that was like, wow, this is, not given the opportunity to ever like give a very great performance.
Now it's different nowadays. Like I can like she was like her performance in the Fargo TV show, her performance in Power of the Dog. Like she's obviously a great actress, but just didn't really seem to get the opportunity. It's like the opposite of Natalie Portman in a way. Well, not the opposite exactly, but they went into like kind of opposite directions, even though they both got critical acclaim as child actors.
I definitely was thinking about Natalie Portman with this, and just like, yeah, kind of the because I feel like they're of a similar age, and their trajectories are pretty parallel.
Yeah, I think they're about a year or so apart.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So yeah, I was actually very impressed with it, and I didn't immediately recognize her.
Really?
Yeah, I had forgotten she was in this movie. In fact, like I only found out like as an adult this was her in this. I didn't. This is not something that I remembered from back in the day. Although I did know about it before I watched it this week, I just forgot. Mm-hmm. And she's just basically the lead as far as like the kid actors go. Like she's clearly more in the lead than the other kid, and so it's good that they had a good kid actor leading the way. So often as we've seen on this very podcast, that is not always the case.
Yeah.
And you know what? I like Van Pelt in theory. Like I like the idea of Van Pelt. I like the performance of Van Pelt.
Yeah, and I think there is an interesting amount of like menace and suspense related to like, oh no, this is like, oh, I know who this is, and just like the fear of him like constantly hunting you. Like in theory, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I do wonder, is the whole thing about like Van Pelt? I mean, he's played by the same actor who plays Alan's dad. And is that the movie saying that? Or is that the game being like, I gotta teach you a lesson about your dad? Like,
well, seeing as how it's never called out in the movie, I have to assume it's not the game. Because I feel if it was the game, it would have been something to resolve. Like when he stands up to him, Van Pelt would just turn into his dad. It's like, so you finally learned how to stand up for yourself, and then vanish or something like that. Nothing like that happened. I mean, that wouldn't be good. I'm not saying it would be good, but I think that would be. I think that any other, if it's the game, I think it's too subtle for movie audiences to get. That's exactly what it's saying. I think that's the movie telling us, and yeah, it's not the game being too subtle. It's the movie not being subtle enough. But I still, yeah, the whole idea of like a combination of a big game hunter and the Terminator is kind of interesting. And actually, if the movie was more about that, it actually might have helped a lot of my issues with this film. But I just really love the scene where Van Pelt goes to the gun shop, which is such a by the way, is a very depressing sequence to watch in 2023 with all the shootings that happen and the lack of gun regulations. However, I love the idea that he brings out those bullets and they're like, oh, they haven't made these bullets since since 1903 or whatever. And he's like, damn. I don't know. Just some reason when he said that, it's cracked up.
Yeah, his matter of fact energy about everything is pretty fun.
Yeah. I would have liked to see a bit more Van Pelt, but less Van Pelt in silly slapstick situations. I would like to see deadly, will definitely murder. Oh god, I also like the idea that like he won't kill anybody else but Alan because Alan's the one that rolled the dice.
Yeah. I think that is scary in its own right. Yeah,
that is particularly scary. Doesn't explain why he was trying to kill him in Jumanji. I guess he was just bored. Anyway,
everyone's fair game when you're in Jumanji.
Fair enough. And this has nothing to do with the movie, but apparently in the cartoon, there was an episode where they kill Van Pelt.
Oh.
And they're finally free of him, except that Peter starts turning into Van Pelt, apparently because there must always be a hunter in Jumanji.
Jesus Christ. I don't remember that episode, but holy shit.
Yeah, like, no, that fucking cartoon was intense. That was an intense cartoon. The only way they could save him was bring Van Pelt back to life.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there anything else that you found particularly interesting or good about this film?
I think, little little Peter Shepherd is a cute little kid. He's the voice of Chip from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh no, I did not realize that.
So he's...
This is just Bradley Pierce, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's see. Is he still active? I suspect probably not, right? No, he says he still is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he's still doing stuff. The last thing I see him in is in some film from 2018 called Deacon. Doesn't seem to have a Wikipedia entry, so can't tell you anything about it. Don't know. It's a little weird looking at a picture of him from 2016 when I just saw him as a 9-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very different. Let's see.
Oh, shoot. He was also Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, okay. That I did not know.
I'm assuming he was hanging out with Julia White. Yeah.
Well, that's fun. Let's see. I guess I just, going back to it, I guess my other big thing is just like, I just love the design of the game itself. I just like the way it looks. Props to the props designer. Because I just really like it.
It looks great. It really does. Like, just that wood carved, like silhouette is just so... It looks really good. When you said like you wish you had the actual, not the actual, but like a replica, I started thinking in my head, like, I kind of want that too now that I think about it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I was talking shit about someone ignoring the drums, but like, honestly, I'm a sucker for a pretty looking board game. In the same way I'm a sucker for a pretty looking journal that I definitely don't need to buy. So like, yeah, I might ignore the drums because I'm just like, oh, it's so pretty.
If I just ignore the drums, then they can't hurt me. Maybe I'm having a nervous breakdown. That doesn't have anything to do with how beautiful this box is.
You know what's good for nervous breakdowns? Board games!
Board games. Okay, so this movie is a great example of an amazing idea and premise for a film that somehow not just doesn't stick the landing, but like shatters both legs. And then the paramedics accidentally drop the person as they're trying to get to the ambulance.
Yeah.
Because the premise of this movie is, like, in itself, such a chilling and interesting idea. Like, the idea of a 12-year-old kid being lost in a magic jungle for decades. The body horror if things don't go exactly the way it's planned to some characters. That is super chilling stuff. And if this was recut as like a modern horror film, like not recut, but if it was recut for a trailer for a modern horror film, it would be probably pretty easy to make that happen.
Honestly, had this movie like been in the 80s, I bet we would have gotten more of that. Because there are a lot of like probably 80s kid movies that are like, shit, it's dark as hell.
Yeah. And then like just the incredible destruction of the town, that and the fact that technically everything is erased from existence because they wind up back in the 60s. That's a very like old school kind of fantasy type of deal. The like technically the characters of Peter and was it just Judy and Peter? It's Judy and Peter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, their characters technically stop existing because like the stuff that would have made them never happens in the new timeline. So they're just gone. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But the problem is it feels like there was a darker script at some point, and seeing as how there's like 3 fucking scriptwriters, not counting Johnson, who almost certainly had a hand in there as well, and also not counting whatever treatments happened before they got their hands on it, it feels like it got cut up to add more kid-friendly stuff. So you've got kind of like an unkid-friendly premise with a lot of silly shit like sprinkled all out that really kind of eliminates the direness of the other stuff. Like Alan being like this, like being like trapped in Jumanji, coming out in the real world only to find out that his whole world has changed. His parents are dead, and he has got nothing. That sort of like, I don't want to say that Robin Williams underplays it, but the character seems to underplay it. I think I would have just not gotten up. I think I would have just walked right into the sea if that had happened to me. Then you've got, like Van Pelt, who we've already kind of established is supposed to be the fucking Terminator, but ends up, slipping and sliding on marbles or paint or whatever. And it's, yeah, like it's just, silly stuff. Not to mention like the monkeys, as ugly and hideously created they are as far as CG goes, they're actually pretty terrifying as just what they do. I feel like if just the monkeys, they could have just destroyed the town given them enough time.
They keep getting guns. Like it's really, and like the mosquitoes, like the real estate woman who apparently gets bit by one of the mosquitoes and she is like fucking comatose and she crashes her car. Like,
didn't they say like 90 people wound up in the hospital?
Yeah, like there are some dire, and like not to, I mean the fucking mosquitoes were terrifying.
They were terrifying.
The fact that they're little what do they call them? They're little
convertibles?
No, the mosquitoes like stingers, I guess. Yeah. No,
I guess they're noses, right?
Yeah,
so, I don't know what that's called.
The pointy part of the mosquito.
The pointy part.
Just going through the windshield? Holy fuck. It's so scary.
Yeah. Somewhat mitigated by Alan trying to drive.
Yes. Yeah, they took the edge off. And also like the spider Audrey too.
Oh yeah. Oh like man,
the tarantular Audrey too, that also has little parts that have like the poison, like that.
It basically kills Judy at the end.
Yeah.
But the problem is like there's such dark stuff here, but the movie does not take it dark. Like sometimes it feels like it is, but then you'll have David Alan Grier show up and have shenanigans with his police car, and then the tension is completely lost. Yeah. Although I will say that, considering it's David Alan Grier, there wasn't as much of like energy as I would have expected from a movie with him in it. I think there's only one scene where he has that level of David Alan Grier energy.
Yeah, when the vine crushes his car, there was a lot of and it's a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, I think my major problem with this film is that it's an interesting premise that is completely devoid of tension because they needed to make a PG film. That's the thing. This movie was PG, and this movie was not well received by critics at the time.
Sure.
Robert Ebert specifically said that it was confusing to him that this movie was PG, not PG-13. And I think I understand that because this movie was allowed to have a bit more teeth than I could see. I could see them having more opportunity to play around with some of the stuff a little darker. It doesn't have to be an R-rated horror film, but it's just like, some of the shit in here is just like Peter's transformation is terrifying. Mm-hmm. But the movie doesn't. They act more like shucks, what a terrible predicament we're in, as opposed to going like, I mean, is this my life now?
Yeah.
So that's my major problem with the film. I couldn't quite get into it because of that. Now it's kind of funny because Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is all slapstick, and yet I actually did enjoy that movie when I saw it in the theater. Not enough to watch it a second time, but I did enjoy it for what it was, mainly because The Rock and Kevin Hart actually have really good chemistry, and I will watch any movie where they're both starring. I guess except for the one about the Super Pets. I didn't get around to watching that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I feel like that goes along with, like, if you're going to do a certain tone, go for it.
Yeah.
But, like, kind of splitting the diff makes it just not go down smooth.
Yeah, I think they probably wanted to have a family film that could get as many people in theaters as possible, but in order to do that, they had to make sacrifices to the general tone. So, I don't know. I'm curious of what the original script was that Robin Williams turned down compared to what the final version was. I'm wondering, like, which version was the darker one, because, like, I don't know that the original one would have had that energy anyway. But whatever we got, I think it was an example of too many chefs in the kitchen and too many producers needing to make that money. Now the movie was a success. Can't say they were wrong about what they did, I guess, but I don't know. I just had a hard time watching it. It wasn't. I should have had more fun watching this, and it just wasn't fun.
Yeah, Yeah, it was not fun.
And then the other problem with this film is just that the special effects just don't look good. In fact, it's not just the CG, which looks awful down the line. I have seen some of the reviews from back then. Apparently, they weren't very fond of those effects even back then. So even though it was state of the art, it wasn't like people were going like, "Wow, this is amazing." I guess if you weren't watching the special on ABC or whatever. But also the practical effects don't always look great.
Yeah, they're that little, they with the lion, they kind of go back and forth with that being like a puppet lion and the CGI lion. And even when it's like the puppety lion, I was just like, man, it just feels like they did not put much money into this. Like it doesn't look, it just looks cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually I'm a big proponent of practical effects and animatronics, but just here it didn't work out. I wonder if Industrial Light and Magic was so expensive that they couldn't give enough money to Amalgamated Dynamics to do anything interesting. Because like these guys are the same guys that did Starship Troopers, and then they did the Alien franchise. They did let's see. This is some of the stuff they did. Tremors. They did Demolition Man. These are some movies that I kind of recall being pretty good with the practical effects. And then there's a lot of bad movies on here. There's a lot of bad movies on here.
Yeah, the spiders, which I guess on the one hand it's all for the best because I didn't have to worry about having like nightmares about these spiders. But oh boy, those are just. I mean, they're just like hot off of some Halloween enthusiast's front porch. Very cheap.
Is there anything else we need to talk about the movie itself before we move on to characters, such as it is?
I'm glad it's not too long.
Yeah, it's not that long of a movie. I mean, it's a PG film. PG films tend to be closer to a tight 90 than not. Kids don't have huge attention spans after all.
I appreciate that. I feel like nowadays everything is pushing that length, even with kids movies.
I mean, I don't watch enough kids movies to know. I've watched 2 PG films in the last couple of years in theaters. I don't remember either of them being super long. So I saw Barbie and I saw the new Ninja Turtle movie.
Oh, I guess I was thinking more like, I guess when I watch kids' movies, they tend to be like Disney things that I feel like they kind of push the length a little bit more than normal kids' movies. But yeah.
Well, potentially.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about characters.
All right. So Robin Williams, this is a Robin Williams joint. This is one of his famous movies from this era where he was just like, I don't know. He seemed like he was getting cast in a lot of kids movies in this time period.
Yeah, because like you've got your Hook, obviously. You have this. You get into like Flubber. Like there's
yeah. And then like Aladdin was kind of the start of that.
Oh yeah. Fern Gully.
Oh yeah, Fern Gully. That's God. We got watch that.
Yeah.
So Jim Johnson didn't actually like the idea of casting Robin Williams because Williams had a reputation for doing a lot of improv, and I guess Johnson doesn't like that. He wants people to adhere to the script. So Williams came in. He agreed to do so, but he was allowed to have some duplicate scenes where he's interacting with Bonnie Hunt. And he's allowed to do improv in those scenes. I don't know how much of that actually made it into the final cut. But here's what I will say about Robin Williams as Alan. I don't think this film utilizes... Okay, it's 2 things. I don't think it utilizes Robin Williams to like his best strengths compared to some of these other high energy roles he's had in some of these other films. But also, I'm not sure if Robin Williams, the character he normally plays, is suitable for a guy who has the sheer amount of trauma that someone like Alan Parrish should have.
Sure.
So it's either Robin Williams is just not good at that type of role, or they didn't write it correctly. But either way, I kind of felt that Williams was kind of out of place here. Like it didn't feel, he felt kind of almost understated.
Yeah, I agree. Although I have to say that like when he like first gets out of Jumanji and all the stuff that happens like with him fighting the lion and stuff, I was like, you know what? It made me think that like the actor Jason Mantzoukas looks and sounds like he just escaped from Jumanji.
Basically every role he's been in, you can, if you had said that he had just escaped from Jumanji, it would have, like, you could justify it. Like, he's like, oh yeah, it makes sense as far as his backstory.
Like 100%. Like I would not blink at that.
I don't know like how many of those actors I listed off were actually people who would have ever been in this movie, but there are a couple of people on that list I think would have probably done a better job. Actually, Bryan Cranston would have been perfect for this role.
Yeah, had this been at a time where he would have done such a thing, I think that would have actually been very fun. I think it's
he would have been like so much younger than we're used to seeing him if he had been in this movie at this time. Like and I'm just remembering his high level energy from Godzilla, where he spends like the first 20 minutes just running around screaming basically. And I'm just imagining like, oh, what if this guy was like 25 years younger?
It's a little confusing because like I think the what you mentioned about like it's hard to write this character who essentially has gone through like 26 years of trauma, because it's like 26 years in this jungle, which I know that he obviously has not, he's not keeping track of time, but he has basically gone through puberty, adulthood, and has entered middle age during this time. And like you can feel at least enough of that. And I found it kind of confusing, like him coming in and being like, "Are you my younger siblings?" Did he just like think that like if once he got out, he would just like go back to where it started? Like, is that why he thinks that? Like,
well, I mean, like, he could have thought that because like if he went back to where it started, there wouldn't be any younger siblings. So at least he's at least aware that some years have passed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little confusing, and like I don't know if his comment about like going back to 6th grade was a joke or did
it's probably a joke-ish.
Okay.
But also like I mean like there's no way Alan doesn't have severe Arrested Development.
Sure.
At this point, so like he's joking, but he's also kind of not joking as well. He probably has no idea what one does if they don't have like education. At that point, like he probably doesn't even, he may not understand the concept of like a GED, for example.
Oh sure, yeah. I just it's just like hard because it's like I'm under the impression that the only like person that he has interacted with has been Van Pelt hunting him. I guess like we don't know for sure, but he definitely talks about the fact that he's like been alone, and like I think that's a hard thing to present in this kind of scenario, because like I don't think he would be this sociable and like bounce back as much as he does upon learning about his family and stuff. Like
also he does a really good job shaving.
Yeah, I mean even for though just a few nicks, like he really bound in like.
Yeah, it's a confusing character. So we said before, Kirsten Dunst is in this. We already kind of talked about her. I will say that I don't think Judy has a lot to her as a character, but I do think her mechanism for dealing with the parent's death of being just a big liar is fine. But like, I kind of would have liked her to be a little bit more melancholy about it, as opposed to like chuckling as she walks away having told a big ridiculous lie to somebody.
Yeah, that moment feels very weird because like her chuckle, and also that lady doesn't even give that much of a reaction, so like I'm not
that's probably how she got killed. Like she saw the big insect and was just like, huh, that's happening, and then just kind of let it sting her.
Well, like I don't know what exactly Judy's getting out of it, because it's like, because I mean my thought would be the idea of like saying this thing and having someone be like, oh my god to you, and just being like, stupid bitch. But like the person doesn't say that much to her story, but like she just like goes off chuckling to herself, and it's like, what are you getting out of this?
But yeah, I don't think there's much more we can talk about Judy. So you already talked about Kirsten Dunst. Bradley Pierce plays her younger brother Peter. By the way, this is not the first time that the 90s has produced the older sister younger brother dynamic in peril. in these adventure movies. Like, this is not dissimilar from Jurassic Park, although I think Kirsten Dunst is a superior actress than who they had in that film.
That girl's got some good scared face eating Jello.
Sure. As far as Bradley Pierce goes, I think he's fine. Peter has even less to do than Judy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like hard. Oh, but I do hate. This is exactly the type of thing that messed me up with this film and just broke the tension. Where he is told to go get the axe.
Oh, God.
And he finds the axe outside the shed where he shows is. It takes him a second to realize that's the axe he's looking for. So he tries to use the axe to break into the shed to get the axe, which is fine. But then when he realizes his mistake, he looks right in the camera, and then goes on his way. And it's like, okay, come on now.
Yeah, does a full-on Jim Halpert to the camera. So unnecessary. It's a stupid gag. Like, why? God.
Especially since moments later, Judy is killed. So, like, I don't know, it's really frustrating. It's a total whiplash in this film for sure.
I also find it interesting that they went out of their way to make a plot point that, like, he's not speaking to anyone. But he starts speaking not only to, I mean, obviously he's still speaking to Judy when no one else is around, but he speaks in general pretty fast. And it's just like, I don't know. I think if you're going to make it a thing that he's gone through trauma and he's not speaking, that, like, if you're going to have that, to make that be more of a moment for him to be speaking.
You're basically saying that his talking to Alan when he shows up feels unearned.
A bit, or like if he starts talking and then he gets turned into, like, his little Monster Mash version, if he was unable to speak again, like it now, like, if him turning into that thing made him not able to speak, like, now it's like now he's forced to not speak, I think that also would have been interesting, but, like, you don't get that.
So basically what you're saying is that instead of doing nothing, they should have done something.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe work some more of actually making a plot, guys.
All right, sure. Bonnie Hunt plays Sarah Whittle, who is so she's Alan's friend from back in the day, who they have to recruit. Who, I have to say this out loud because I have to remind myself who she is because she's not in the cartoon.
Yeah.
I assume just they figured it'd be too many people and wouldn't fit into
the new premise.
The new premise.
Yeah.
But I don't know much about Bonnie Hunt. I looked at her filmography, and it is a who's who of movies that I've not seen.
She is quite a Pixar gal, isn't she?
Yeah, I was going to say, and also in a lot of Pixar films where I would not have recognized her voice. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I can't even think of a single movie I may have seen. Like, I guess I've seen Beethoven.
Right. I was
many
thinking,
years ago.
I had a similar thought. It's just like, oh, I guess, okay.
But I didn't see Rain Man. I didn't see Jerry Maguire. I didn't see The Green Mile.
Nope.
I didn't see The Cheaper by the Dozen 1 or 2.
Did I? I might have seen one before. I'm not sure.
Nor did I see her sitcom. She's apparently starred on more than one TV show. That's so weird. This prolific actor who's just been in a ton of things I've just never seen. It is odd. Anyway, as for how she does here, like, you know, I think what we can say another problem with this movie is that it doesn't feel like the characters are fully realized. Because I keep finding myself being like, I actually don't have much to say about the character. And again, don't have much to say about Sarah. I think that the movie tries to make a bigger deal of the idea of Alan got stuck because she abandoned him. But I feel like the movie doesn't do a good job of making that like a real proper plot point. I mean, like, he disappeared and she got chased by a bunch of vicious bats. I mean, like, I feel that that's kind of an understandable reaction, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of a, well, what you gonna do? Because, like, also, like, I'm sure by time, even if she had, like, and maybe she did, like, rally to come back to the house.
Yes, we know so little.
Yeah, but like, even if she did, I bet it wasn't the same night. Like, I bet it would be like the next day. But by then it's just like, oh shit, he's gone. Like, I don't know. I think it would have been hard for her to even try to play the game. Also, yeah, I think it's just hard. And then, like, also, if it's just the two of them, if she rolls and she doesn't get a 5 or a set or an 8, does she just, like, would she just have to would she be able to just keep playing on, like, it's her turn, her turn, her turn? Or would she just be stuck because it would be his turn next? We don't know.
Now, we don't know because it doesn't come up, but I have to assume that Jumanji is a sinister enough game to understand that it's okay to skip Alan's turn in that exact situation.
I guess.
Who knows? But like, I think I just would have liked to have more on that and make the idea that Sarah abandons Alan darker, like just like more obvious. Like maybe the reason that his dad got the reputation of having murdered him is because that was the only explanation Sarah's mind could rationally accept. Like her mind couldn't accept that he got sucked into a game, but it would accept, like maybe a therapist suggested that maybe his father killed her. Like, maybe he did. And then that ended up being like the thing that started, which would give Alan significantly more reason to be upset.
Yeah. I also feel like when she's like, when they're like hanging out, like, where are they on, like on the couch and they're talking, and she was like complaining about like the trauma of what happened to her, like after he got sucked into the game and how no one believed her and blah blah blah. And it's just like, these are all valid things, but I feel like the one person you cannot complain about your last 26 years to is the person who has been in the fucking jungle alone for 26 years. And like, because he was just like, I was alone. And she's like, so was I. And it's like, bitch, you weren't though. Like, it's like valid. I can understand that it must have been awful for you to have everyone be like, to not believe you, for you to feel like you're crazy, for people to say that you're crazy. And you could complain about that to anyone except for Alan. Like, please understand that his shit is worse.
Why did she change her name? She says that she doesn't go by Sarah Whittle anymore. So why did she change her name? Especially if she didn't move.
Oh, to whatever that psychic name is on the door?
I assume that's just a professional name for her business. But she literally says, like, I don't go by that name anymore.
Maybe she goes by the psychic name.
I guess.
But also, fucking why? Like, why did she, like, what, why? Because it's like, it's only in that moment. Like,
yeah, they don't bring up the idea of her being a psychic, because even if we can assume that she's not really a psychic, if I were Alan, I would at least at some point ask, like, so what's up with you being a psychic suddenly?
Yeah, like, what a...
But it's just never mentioned again.
Yeah, what a weird thing to, go out of your way to make a plot point that for some reason she's a psychic now. A psychic who, like, super loves her therapist. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what?
Like, why bother even having that sign? Because it literally affects nothing else in the film. Like, nothing else is affected by them thinking that she's a psychic or whatever. They could have just knocked on the door and had the exact same conversation, and it would not have mattered.
Yeah, weird. I always find it funny that, like, small towny shit where everyone is always just like still living in the house that they grew up in.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. I'll give Alan a pass for like when they reset time, just because like the Parises are the family in that town.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna stay in it's probably him staying in town is the main reason for that city to still exist. And if you're gonna stay in town, why not stay in your giant mansion?
Yeah, that is fair. I just keep thinking about, like, I just cannot believe that aunt bought that big old house. Anyway,
there was a time where inheriting your parents' house as your own was a pretty common practice in the United States.
Sure.
Doesn't really happen too much anymore, mainly because the baby boomers just refuse to die. Speaking of the aunt, this Nora Shepherd, played by Bebe North. I don't know much about her.
I mean, she's known most for Frasier.
Oh, you know what? I barely watched Frasier, and I don't know really anyone in there. Who is she in Frasier?
She's just like one of the main, like, she's one of like two main women. I never really watched Frasier, but I do know that she is like of kind of the four like main people. She's like one of the four main characters besides like Frasier, Niles, some other chick who I'm forgetting the name of, and then BB Newar's character. Like those are kind of like.
Oh shit! So she was an ADA. She played an ADA in like a Law and Order Trial by Jury, which was a show that I watched, and I watched them cancel it, and I forgot everything about it. She's been in a lot of stuff. I haven't watched almost anything that she's been in.
Also, like, since we did have our Chicago episode, she also has played Velma Kelly on Broadway. She also played, and like, speaking of like, we did Addams Family. She was also in the Addams Family Broadway musical as Morticia. I personally do not care for her voice. I find it shaky and weird, but apparently people like it a lot because she often ends up on Broadway.
Huh? She also played Mama Morden in Broadway years later.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I don't want to like throw shade at her, but I don't think she's.
I don't think it was being. I don't think of it being throwing shade. It's just like some people got it, some people don't. Anyway,
but I will. Okay, no, I'll bring this up later. Sorry, keep going.
Okay, I was just saying that as far as this movie goes, her character is half written, and I don't think the creators put any real effort into developing her character other than there needs to be a reason why the Paris kids are in that house. Until they just said, oh, the aunt bought it to make a bed and breakfast, which is, like, again, a bonkers plan.
Man.
That's all I was going to say.
Yeah. Also, like, this is, I should have mentioned this earlier. This is the longest day ever.
It's like, pretty long.
There's a lot of action, a lot of location. I know it's a small town. But a lot of location changes. And we still end up being completely in the daylight with all of this. It's a very long day.
Yeah, it never gets to like twilight. It never gets to nighttime. That is pretty interesting now that I think about it. All right, let's move on. One more character I feel we should probably talk about, and that's I guess two characters, but played by the same actor, Jonathan Hyde, who plays Sam, Alan's dad, and then also Van Pelt. We talked enough about Van Pelt. I just want to mention first of all, I think Jonathan Hyde does very good playing both these roles.
Yeah.
And I did not realize they were the same actor when I was a kid. Like that is something that I found out much later.
I agree. I think as a kid, I don't think I made that connection.
Yeah, the fucking in the Peter Pan play, like Captain Hook and the dad are also supposed to be played by the same actor. The only thing I'll mention about Sam is that I do like that he showed appreciation to Alan when he did finally stand up to his bully, even though the circumstances were really bad, and then he fucked up as a dad by sending his kid out to the wolves.
Yeah.
And he understood that he fucked up, but because he's an old-timey, barrel-chested capitalist, he couldn't bring himself to apologize. He just said, like, oh, if I knew, I would have done it differently.
Yeah, just put all that, just channel all that shame into being mean to your wife. Yeah.
That's how they did it back in those days. It was a simpler time. It was a better time. But I do like that he had such like a different like thought process with Alan once that came up, because he's like, oh well, you did it. I'm actually very proud of you, and I think that you should be rewarded by doing this great thing that I think is good. Yeah. Like sending him off to a boarding school was supposed to be a reward for him finally becoming a man. And I don't love the results, and I kind of prefer what ends up happening in the film. But I did find it kind of like he loves him in his own way type of deal.
Yeah, this is definitely a time in history where, like, especially him being this, like, big, well-to-do, whatever. Like, you're not gonna know what your child actually wants. All you're thinking about is what you think would be good for them, tra-la-la, and the idea that they wouldn't like what you think would be good or whatever is so, like, how dare you? This is all I cared about. This is all you should care about. And it's very, yeah. And, I do find it sweet at the end when they reconcile, and even when, Alan admits that he is the one who ruined the conveyor belt thingy, that he's just like, thank you for being honest and thank you for telling me. Like, yeah, it's a nice moment, and it does show that, like, yes, he is in the end a good guy in his own way.
I want us to move on, but I do want to just point out that the young Alan was Adam Bird, who I don't know anything about really. He's supposedly still active, but Sarah,
Yeah,
young
Sarah,
played by Laura Bell Bundy, who outside of Kirsten Dunst, and the fact that Robin Williams is dead, and might be the most successful person out of this film.
It's so funny because I mean I know her the most from like musicals. Like she was the original Elle Woods in the Broadway musical version of Legally Blonde, and that's kind of like where she became like pretty like Broadway famous. I do find it very funny because like looking at her, she's like, because I do not recognize her at all, and I'm like, ooh, that is a different nose. But
yeah,
but yeah, it is interesting to be like, wow. Yeah, I feel like the women are really, taking the reins as far as stuff that they do after this movie.
Sure. Yeah. She's done. She's active everywhere. Like she's still doing movies. She's still doing Broadway right now. Apparently, still producing music. Like she just released an album last year. Like she's got a lot going on. Yeah. This actually would be considered like probably a very seminal part of her journey as a performer. And I've never heard her name associated with this movie ever.
Yeah, I had no idea. It was not until watching it this time and looking on IMDb that I realized that was her. I had no idea. Before we leave characters, shout out Carol Parrish, Alan's mom, played by Patricia Clarkson. She clearly was only there for the day, but make that money, girl.
Yeah. I did not recognize her at all.
Oh, I definitely did. But I love Patricia Clarkson. I will say it's very funny though, because like when Alan comes back and he goes into his room and he's looking at the picture of his parents, and it's clearly them in the outfits that they're in when they leave for the party like that day. Like obviously like the director or whatever, like the AD is like, okay, stand here so we can take like a picture of you. And it's so funny because it's like, it's clearly like just that day. And it's like, does this mean that this is like the only outfits they ever wear out, or that like after he was gone they took like a picture of themselves and then put it in his bedroom?
It's like, so you'll always remember us. I did forget to talk a bit more about David Alan Grier, so I do want to go there. And he plays Carl, who is the shoe guy who becomes a cop. I just want to. Here's my concern, and then we can move on here. Because David Alan Grier is fine. Like there's nothing to write home about, and doesn't that I wanted David Alan Grier energy in this film, because I think it should be a bit darker for that sort of comedy that he tends to be famous for. But much like Robin Williams, I kind of feel like they got this guy who's known for a certain type of performance and they don't utilize him to the full extent of that. So why even have him there? But the thing I want to ask is like, how the fuck old is Carl in when the movie starts, like in the 60s?
Yeah, they're really playing some Black Don't Crack stuff right in this movie.
Like he's a little gray, not very gray, a little gray. It's been 26 years, and like he's still like just, I don't know, like how long has he been a cop? He's been a cop this whole time? Why is he still like the guy driving around patrol cars?
Well, I mean, who knows when he got into the old cop business?
Yeah, the movie does not tell us anything about what happens to Carl in those 26 years. He just shows up as a cop, presumably because that would be the role that would make most sense for him to appear in the movie as often as he does.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like, why are you always around?
They also do not give us the sequence where Alan and Carl actually talk about what happened, where Alan basically frames Carl and it ruins his life.
That is true. They do not get to that.
They start talking about it, but then the car stops, and then we cut away to another scene, and we come back. They probably already have settled it.
And also, like, in relate to that, well, I have two things about that. One, the shoe that he makes, which is just
That's so fucking crazy.
It's so stupid. It's clearly like a 1990s shoe that he presents to him, and it's like, this is gonna change footwear. It's like, that wouldn't be the shoe you designed.
I think that was done on purpose. I think they're trying to be funny. I think it's one of the examples of the tonal whiplash here.
Yeah, it's dumb, and it doesn't fit. And also, why is he not there in that new future? Like, what? Like, once they, go through life again, and they're at the Christmas party.
Oh no, he is.
Where was he?
He in the fucking background. They don't talk to him, but he's in the background playing guitar.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, fine. But
so I guess because it seems very clear that this is the shoe company Christmas party.
Sure.
And the fact that he's there, even though they don't talk to him, we don't find out what happens. It seems likely that he never lost his job, or at least got rehired immediately, and has been with the company ever since. But they don't talk about it at all. We don't know what his role in the company is. If he's still with the company after all this time, you think he could be fucking CEO for all we know.
Right. Okay. I did not notice him before, and so I was just like, where is he? How dare you? Okay. At least...
Yeah. No. He's there. But he's literally in the background with all of the extras for the day.
Cool.
I don't think there's any specific music I wanted to go over. I'm not sure who does the music.
Oh, this is not really. I don't know who plays the homeless guy, but it's like, man, that's boy howdy, freaking Brantford, New Hampshire. Even their hobos are super classy.
Yeah, that was the classiest homeless person I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Except maybe Lawrence Fishburne in the John Wick movies.
It's like, he's got the fireplace going. I half expected him to ask if he wanted some sherry. Like, really living a nice cozy life in that factory.
Would you and your friends like to stay for tea? Jeeves?
Got that nice pipe. Haven't got a cozy dog bed for his dog. Just having a good time. New Hampshire.
All right, so Ariel, what would you give Jumanji? A thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a thumb somewhere in the middle?
Thumbs down. I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, I'm actually a little on the fence here, because I feel like this movie's not good, but it's also kind of uneventful. So I kind of feel like I could justify giving it a thumbs in the middle.
Because it's very just meh.
Yeah, I think I will. I think I'm gonna give it a low thumbs in the middle because because this movie didn't offend me. It didn't bother me.
That's
it just
fair.
didn't do anything for me at all.
Yeah.
I was upset by the fact that it could have been a really good and chilling movie, and instead it was all over the place. But I didn't watch this and go wow, what a bad movie. There's been movies that we've watched that revisiting was not fun and hard to get through.
That is very fair. I think maybe, I guess this is more of a middle, because it is more of a myth than anything. It's not upsetting.
Yeah, this is a wet fart. So
although
it's not...
I gotta say, I'm gonna leave a very bad Yelp review at this Rainforest Cafe because they are going too far.
Yeah, the kitchen was full of monkeys. It was disgusting.
The amount of crocodiles. I could see one. I can understand one in the corner. But there are so many crocodiles in this restaurant. I just can't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And quite frankly, I hate that my wife was killed by a plant. And I'm just going to have to give them 0 stars.
I did enjoy...
Will not dine here again.
Did enjoy the asthmatic rhino. Make sure to incorporate more of those in your establishments.
Oh, yeah, the rhinos were great. They're great. I mean, if my wife had survived, it would have been... She would have loved to see it.
She would have loved it.
She would have loved it if she made it past the entree. So, that's going to do it for us this week. Next time, we are going back to anime for the first time in some time. I mentioned when we did Ranma 1/2, that was one of the most important animes to the development of me as an anime fan. I would say that the one we're going to watch next week is the Codifier. Like, this is what to me, this show is what made me say, like, yeah, I'm just going to make this my whole personality, like, for like the next like 4 or 5 years. And that is Trigun.
Woo.
I got a lot to say about it, and I might even talk a little bit about a former establishment in Ann Arbor called WYSIWYGs.
Aww.
But I'm going to send out a warning to anyone listening to this now. If you're the type of person that likes to watch this stuff before our episodes just to get a sense of it, I would say this is the one to do it, because if you can go into Trigun without knowing anything about it, that is the best way to watch Trigun. Just not knowing any of the details, just take a look. Don't even read the description. You can find it on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, you have the ability to watch it. I would just suggest you go ahead and watch it. I'm not going to say anything about it today, and I'll probably give it a second warning at the top of the next episode. But I went into this blind, and I think if I had gone any other way, I think it would have not been as good experience for me.
You know what? That's an interesting way to put it, because FM, he said that he didn't particularly care for Trigun, and I wonder if he had heard too much, like heard stuff about it ahead of time, and maybe that colored things.
Maybe. It also depends on when he watched it too.
That's
because
fair.
Like, Trigun is not Cowboy Bebop in terms of holding up. Like, Cowboy, even though they're kind of contemporaries of each other, but Cowboy Bebop still looks pretty amazing. Trigun looks kind of not great, like looking at it in modern lenses. So if he watched it any other time besides like when he was like 14, I can understand him not wanting to give it a chance. Oh, it's important to note, there is a new Trigun cartoon that has been playing this past year. We're not going to watch that. That is a retelling of the same story, but it's pretty different. We'll talk a little bit about it, but we're sticking with the one from the 90s. All right, cool. So I think that is going to do it for us then. So we're going to get going, but our theme song is Sell Out by Zombie Apocalypse Now from the EP Forbidden Tales of Science. You can find that and more at antizombierock.bandcamp.com. Now, Ariel, so Jumanji was a game about the jungle, and Zathura was a game about going to space. What do you think should have been the third game in this trilogy of horror games?
I mean, it's gotta be like a deep sea one, right?
Oh, what's a good name for Atlanta? No, Atlanta is a city.
This is a great game of Atlanta.
All right, well, we're going to go see if we can find this game and hope beyond hope that it's actually called Atlanta. But until we can find it, as always, please do not put a dirty sock in your younger sibling's mouth.
Yeah. Do it! Drop Jumanji into Mount Doom! It's the only way to destroy it!
I don't want to.
I kind of want to see that. I want to see that. Where's that cut?
Where's that cut? Oh, man. Are they doing anything? Those guys don't seem that busy these days.
Yeah, let's do the Lord of Jumanji trilogy. Let's make that happen.
Better than The Hobbit.